They made the announcement. The announcement was announced.
I
And
can't wait to cut in former recording us to this reaction because if I remember correctly, I think we were both like, these are our hopes, but we don't think they're gonna happen. And I think our predictions were pretty spot on.
yeah, I'm pretty sure definitely one of our guesses was just steak F1. So it is
Right.
December 29th. It is 1:23 p.m. Eastern, 10:23 Pacific time. And
Right.
we currently do not know, we don't know the new name of the Sauber team. And they're having like a
Whoa.
lot of fun teasing it on social media. It's to a point now where like it can't be that good. I think, we can't. I don't know how you could tease a name so much that you think it's gonna be like such a huge, like, stay tuned. And I'm like, but
Right.
you announced it already.
Right. Especially so they teased that they were going to drop the name when the official FIA entry list came out. And the name dropped and we all dramatically flamed it because it was such a mouthful and didn't make any sense and we all said, "All right, so we're just going to call it Sauber." Great. And then on December 19th, they dropped the press release of, "It seems our recently released team name has been getting a lot of attention. Uh-huh. While we're not ready to unveil the final result yet, we are aware of what's at stake." Ha, get it? Stake. "Rest
Mm.
assured, we're on a mission to unleash the most exciting team identity this team has ever seen. Gone are the days of short and sweet. We're cooking up a feast." And to your point, they've been teasing a lot on social media, and it keeps talking about like they keep making food references, and they keep saying like, like short is bad, long is good. And on January 1st, so a couple days after we record this, they're supposed to be dropping like their official branding and what their actual name is. And I just think this is a bunch of like PR scrambling. Like they actually thought that we were all going to love the name that dropped and they're trying to like recover.
Yeah. They like the initial like dropping of the name that's like it's kind of the same, but it's not the same because it's not Alfa Romeo and everyone will be fine with it. And then when everyone reacted like you had an opportunity to do literally anything and you just kind of did it, and this is just a too much mouthful of a name. I feel like it's going to be a rearrange of names we already have. I would be pleasantly surprised if it ends up being something interesting, but I think we have the branding. I think we have the brands that will be in the name. I think we Sauber's just suddenly, or whoever suddenly panicking of like, oh well, no, we don't. I guess it wouldn't be Sauber, but someone's panicking that we're just going to call it Sauber, and they don't want us to call it that. I feel like they want us to be calling
Right.
it Steak Team.
Oh no. Oh, and that's the food references? Are they
Yeah.
gonna really lean into like steak the food?
Look, if you
Yeah,
get a
I
steak
think
mascot, if you bring a steak mascot to the grid, I'll give it to you. I'll do it. I'll be on board, but you're not. So,
did they want us to call it kick? Did they want us to call it steak? I think you're 100% spot on that it's not that the name is going to be different, but they're going to try to convince us that we shouldn't call it Sauber.
yeah, there's something about the response of we're just going to call it Sauber that they felt immediately, oh, we need to say that it's the mouthful, it's this, it's that. When, like, if the mouthful of it being the problem and people opting it to call it Sauber was, like, not a good solution in their eyes or an outcome, like, yeah, they're going to be pushing something. They're going to make it some kind of campaign or branding that pushes fans to call it something else. Will it work? My guess would be no. But I'm intrigued to see what it is. But I'm very sick of an announcement for an announcement for an announcement, which I now feel like has been three times for
Yes.
this game.
I agree with that assessment. I think that this would have to be a stellar announcement with a great actual name for us to shift gears at this point because we're already all frustrated. To your point, uh, I have heard rumors that their livery and color scheme is going to be completely different this year. So I think if they drop really cool branding, like if the branding itself is actually sick, I could see us all wanting to change the name. Low expectations, high hopes.
I think that's a great, yeah. Low expectations, high hopes. Gonna call it Sauber.
And
Which,
that's what it turned out to be.
hello, the name is Steak F1 Team. Wow, it's so shocking. Wow, it's not shocking. We literally predicted it.
It is taking every part of my body right now to restrain myself from word vomiting all the thoughts I have about this announcement and just go one at a time. So I think the best place to start with the fact that we now know there's going to be a team on the grid for 2 years with the name Steak F1 Team. My biggest issue with this is that it is incredibly hard to get invested in a name for a team that is only going to be there for 2 years because Audi is taking over in 2026. Like, how am I supposed to care?
Yeah, I was, funny enough, driving to work this morning, was explaining to my dad the whole name scenario thing and explaining the process of the Alfa Romeo leaving. Here's a name announcement, but it's not the real name announcement. And here's an announcement, and oh, it's like the name that everyone probably could have predicted, but like explaining the whole process just felt unbelievably very silly. And my entire conclusion was just, it just feels really weird of like, let's have this big name change, and then just knowing in 2 years it's going to be just something completely different and irrelevant and just somewhere else. It's like, why bother? Besides, that's a company just has an overwhelming amount of like cash to throw somewhere.
Or Sauber needs the money, so it sells off the title to sponsorship. I was listening to the Missed Apex podcast that they did this past week, which I highly recommend you go listen to this podcast, where they attempt to fix the Constructors' Championship. And it's like, no one cares about the Constructors' Championship. How do we get people to care? And that has been like rattling around in my brain as this announcement happened, where I'm like, of course we don't care about the Constructors' Championship. Like, you and I talk all the time about how we love both of the drivers who drive for this team, but we find it incredibly impossible to get invested in this team. And part of that reason is because it changes all the time. It was only Alfa Romeo for 5 years. Like, it is hard. I thought I was excited for this announcement, and when I woke up on January 1st, I realized it didn't really matter what it was. That no matter the outcome of what the name was going to be, it was going to be hard for me to care.
Yeah, I just kind of had just such low expectations, and it was an opportunity for it to be something really exciting when it just, I still just feel like I'm going to call it Sauber, or just get prepared to get calling it Audi and just call it Audi. I, yeah, I don't know. I don't see myself calling it Steak. I think they tried to like pull a really cool, like announcement. So Drake's involved. That's cool. Something that you and I discovered a year ago when Steak and Kick and all of these things were announced as a sponsor in Alfa Romeo was that Drake has an investment in Steak. And could there be some type of like involvement with Drake during the team last year? And then like nothing ever happened. So we just never thought anything of it. So then when this announcement came out, it was like, yes, finally. Something that I found just absolutely hysterical is that it's like a floating, like, this is Drake's voice. We need to tell you and remind you that this is Drake speaking to you, which, as just putting my marketing brain on for like 1 second, almost defeats the purpose of the amount of money. You're right. I never take it off, but I guess putting like my super marketing brain on is that like, if you need to put, and I'm not saying that Drake's voice is not unbelievably recognizable, but if you feel the need to put in the middle of your announcement like Drake's voice, like that kind of thing, then it kind of takes away from it a little bit. But how much more involved will he be at all? Will we see him at a race? Maybe. I don't know. It definitely amplified. It was the coolest part of the announcement was not the name. It was Drake reading the announcement, which I don't think you want as your like takeaway from an announcement like that.
I mean, again, it's limited time, 2-year name. If the biggest thing we took away was, ooh, Drake, that's cool, they probably would have achieved something positive. But I agree with you. I felt I had a momentary moment of, is this AI generated? Because it was just his voice. And then I realized that it was a joint post on Instagram with like his actual Instagram account, and I went, oh, so this is real. And then I listened to the whole thing again. It just, it felt half baked. It felt like, we need to get Drake, or we need to do something cool. Can we get Drake? Oh, we can get Drake in this way as a voiceover. And I wish they just did something else. Because, in my opinion, a full baked, less famous person is better than a half baked Drake. And then maybe they could have worked something out with Drake's team for later in the year to do something big and cool where they could actually show his face. So I just, but you're right. It was the coolest part of this whole thing was the prospect of Drake's involvement. But that was the coolest part of Steak becoming a sponsor last year too. So I'm
And then there was
tentative.
just nothing, which if anyone's like unfamiliar with what stake is, there's like crypto, there's gambling, there's like it's like an
It's
online
weird.
casino, big
Live
question
streaming.
marks on a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of we're not fully sure of exactly what it is. And it just seemed like this was like a lining up for a perfect, like event in Vegas of all places, and then like nothing. So who knows if maybe it was just another contract discussion. They couldn't get Drake to do things places. He's a busy dude, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it felt like there could have been more than here's Drake's voice. The AI piece is really funny. I didn't even think about that now, but it definitely seems like that could have been possible. And of
I was
course, it was
tired.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, this ultimately was an announcement for further announcements, which
Yeah.
we've made very clear is one of our least favorite things that any organization person to do. And this is what this whole thing has been, is an announcement to an announcement. And then this announcement somehow led to more announcement.
Right. It was first, the team principal said, oh, when the official FIA list comes out, you're going to hear our name. And then we saw that. And then they were like, crap, that you didn't like that. Okay, that's not actually our name. Stay tuned for January 1st, where we're going to announce our name. And what did they announce on January 1st? Their name, some colors, and a logo, and then a countdown to their car launch. So, yeah, they need, I think that the when you do a countdown to anything, even if you're going to start another countdown, what you get at that end of that countdown needs to feel substantial. And a loose video with what I thought originally was an AI generated Drake with a underwhelming logo that's just the Stako logo with F1 team below it doesn't feel like a payoff. Like, you cannot count down to something and then launch it with no payoff.
You mean you don't feel content that you can, in a little bit over a month, click on a website?
Yeah, the fact that now when you go to the F1 team's website, it's just a countdown too. Like, come on. Okay, but a lot of complaining. A really positive though is the neon green looks cool.
Yeah, and green looks very cool. I'm anticipating, if there's not some type of black with this like electric green on the livery, like what are we even doing here?
Right.
I'll challenge you to go the other way around. Make it a green livery with like some kind of like black detailing. Go like really out there if you want to completely prove us wrong. But there's potential there. There's potential for the branding to be really unbelievably sick on track, and to like give some other things to talk about.
An
No red.
actual payoff. No
Actual
red.
payoff. There's been no red, which is great because there's the red car that's on the track, and we have enough of that. So more colors, and this lime green is very different than from like everything else that
Yeah.
we have.
Because the Aston Martin green is kind of teal, deep green, like earthy green, I guess. So this would be really different. Because it is such a limited time thing, there is a clear expiration date with Audi joining the grid and buying this team. There is no need to make this brand identity like universally loved or something that is going to be iconic for years to come. Like, we don't need, when McLaren made the investment that papaya was going to be their color, and then everything became papaya, and it was like this vast branding thing. I don't want Stake F1 team to do this. I want them to just be wacky, wild, inconsistent, like, give me the craziest stuff ever, because it doesn't matter. It's all going away. If you want me to invest in it, make it extra temporary, essentially. Like, I want you to show up to a racetrack and me to not fully know what's going to happen.
Here for a good time, not for a long time.
Well, speaking of not a long time, there are going to be multiple races this year where this team is going to have to be a different name, Nicole.
I forgot about this entirely.
So, Stake is a gambling company as one of its pillars. And this means in multiple countries, you are not allowed to advertise for that company in that country. So there were 4 countries last year that the name, even on the title sponsorship, had to change from Stake to Kick. So my question is, like, on all the graphics where, like, they put up all the drivers and it's like Lewis Hamilton and AMG Mercedes, like, is it some weeks going to say Valtteri Bottas Stake F1 team, and some weeks going to say Valtteri Bottas Kick F1 team? Because there are literal countries where they are not allowed to be called this.
We'll find out, but that's, I guess, exactly what it's going to. Imagine it just said F1 team, and it's just like a generic, like, suddenly we're in
It was
like
like
Legoland.
It's like when the Washington football team became, or like when the Washington insert racist name here became the Washington football team for 1 year. And like, that was the greatest. Like, I was just so happy they weren't the racist name anymore, but then they decided to call themselves football team. Like,
yeah, I hope they just go with the F1 team for those 4 races, but I'm sure it'll be like a Kick something.
Yeah. So they bought this title sponsorship for 2 years, essentially getting 48 races. And for maybe 40 of them, they're actually going to get the logo and branding behind it.
Hopefully that returns good enough. I don't know. I'm stuck here with that. They either had just so much to spend and or Sauber needed the money. Both. Who knows?
Both.
It's just
always both.
It's always both is always the answer. It's doesn't seem like it necessarily fits, but it does seem like it'll be an interesting, blip in the formula namings of teams. But where do you think you're gonna fall on the naming of this? Do you think you're calling it steak? I'm maybe every week I'm just gonna call it a different cut of steak, like filet mignon or like.
Oh, please. Okay, please. That's what you have to do. Yes. To take your question seriously, I know that I'm going to probably rotate in and out of calling it Sauber, maybe Steak, and then when we're talking about 2026, I'm probably just going to call them Audi because that's what they're going to be. I apologize to anyone who watches the show because I will be inconsistent about it.
Start the count now of how many times do we accidentally just say Alfa Romeo?
Oh yeah, that too. Like until I become inundated with the new name, it's going to be really hard for me to call it anything besides Sauber, because I had trained my brain going into this year that it's going to go back to Sauber before it becomes Audi, and that's what you need to call it. I also don't think it helps that, along with the legality stuff, by the way, like, I don't know if British broadcasts are even allowed to advertise gambling. So I don't know.
There has to be. There would be no way that there would be that amount of like races and coverage that like their name couldn't even be discussed. But who knows? Who knows how much that they're just like willing to spend money. And now I can't remember back to what. I mean, the name
and I don't
was
know
still
what
so
that
long last year.
means. Yeah, and I don't know what that means for the F1 TV coverage, because we don't watch Sky Sports, we watch the F1 TV coverage, and that's a national or an international feed that's just broadcast to multiple countries. All I know is that there's a lot of people who are currently paid a lot of money, who have a law degree, who are all trying to figure all of this out right now, and you and I are just like, filet mignon.
Filet mignon, New York strip, T-bone for 2. That's it. Can't wait to see Joe drive that new. I suddenly couldn't think of any other steak.
Yeah, my brain.
Yeah, I can take a filet mignon.
Skirt?
There you go. Skirt steak. Yep.
Leave in
Look,
the comments below your favorite kind of steak, and eventually we will call what the team formerly known as Alfa Romeo that name at some point this season.
Prepare for the beef jokes. Thank you for listening and watching this highlight of episode 50 of Gridwalk. Woo, fun number. Don't forget to like and subscribe for a ton more of F1 videos and F1 fun. But you made it this far into this video and you don't want to miss this episode. So go watch the rest of the podcast. You can click here to watch the full thing right now. Click, 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 click.